The envelope is yellow, aged, creased, held together by tape that has turned brown with time. It sits on the small table between Oprah Winfrey and Denzel Washington. Neither of them is looking at the cameras. Neither of them is performing. They are both staring at this envelope like it contains something dangerous. Denzel's hands are trembling. This is Denzel Washington, the man who has played warriors and kings and giants of history. The man whose voice alone can command a room. The man who has never shown weakness on any stage. His hands are trembling. Oprah reaches toward the envelope. Denzel stops her. "Wait," he says. His voice cracks. "Before you open that, I need to tell you something. I need to tell everyone something. Something I have never told anyone outside my family." Oprah pulls her hand back. The studio is silent. 400 people lean forward in their seats. And Denzel Washington, two-time Academy Award winner, one of the greatest actors of his generation, begins to cry. Not movie tears, real tears. The kind that come from somewhere so deep they surprise even the person crying them. Oprah does not speak. She does not touch him. She does not try to comfort him. She just waits, because she knows. Some confessions need space to breathe. Some truths need room to emerge. Some moments cannot be rushed. And what Denzel is about to reveal will change how everyone sees him forever. How we get here? Rewind 137 minutes. The morning had started with celebration. Today's show was a special event, a tribute to excellence, a conversation between two icons who had shaped American culture for decades. Oprah Winfrey and Denzel Washington, together on stage, discussing his legendary career. The promotion had been running for weeks. Tickets had sold out in 11 minutes. The audience was packed with fans who had waited years for this moment. Denzel had arrived at the studio at 8:15 a.m. He was quiet, polite, professional, but something was different. The production assistant who escorted him to the green room noticed that he was carrying something. A manila envelope tucked under his arm. Old, weathered, clearly precious. She asked if she could take it for him. He declined. He held it the entire time he waited. He held it during makeup. He held it during the sound check. He held it as he walked toward the stage. And when he finally sat down across from Oprah, he placed it on the small table between them. Oprah noticed immediately. "What is that?" she asked during the commercial break before taping began. Denzel looked at her. "Something I should have shared a long time ago," he said. "Something for the show, something for the world." The taping began at 10:45 a.m. Oprah delivered her introduction with characteristic warmth. "My guest today needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. 2 Academy Awards, 3 Golden Globes, a Tony Award, countless performances that have moved us, challenged us, and changed us. He is quite simply one of the finest actors who has ever lived. Please welcome Denzel Washington." The applause was thunderous. Denzel walked onto the stage with his usual commanding presence. He embraced Oprah. They sat down. The conversation began. For the first 40 minutes, everything proceeded normally. They talked about his early career, his breakout role in Saint Elsewhere, his first Oscar for Glory, his transformative performance in Malcolm X, his second Oscar for Training Day. Denzel was charming, articulate, generous with his stories. He talked about the directors who had shaped him, the actors who had inspired him, the roles that had challenged him. He talked about his wife Pauletta and their 4 children. The importance of family, the grounding force of faith. The audience laughed at his jokes. They nodded at his wisdom. They applauded his insights. Everything was perfect. Subscribe and leave a comment because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. And then Oprah asked a question that changed everything. "Denzel," she said, "you have spoken often about your mother and her influence on your life, but you rarely talk about your father. Can you tell us about him?" Denzel's expression shifted. The ease drained from his face. His eyes moved to the envelope on the table. The studio grew quiet. "My father," Denzel said slowly, "was a complicated man." He paused. His name was Denzel Washington Sr. He was a Pentecostal minister. He worked for the water department. He was tall, strong, had a voice that could fill a church. Another pause. "He left when I was 14. Oprah nodded gently. I have never talked about this publicly, Denzel continued. Not in detail. Because for most of my life, I did not understand it. I just knew that one day he was there, and the next day he was gone. He looked at the envelope again. I spent decades being angry at him. Decades trying to prove something. Every role I took, every award I won, part of me was saying, look at me, Dad. Look what I did without you. His voice wavered. And then, 3 years ago, I got a phone call. Oprah leaned forward. The audience held its breath. My father was dying, Denzel said. Cancer. He had 6 weeks to live, and he wanted to see me. He closed his eyes. I almost did not go, he said. After all those years, after all that pain, I almost stayed away. He opened his eyes, but my wife said something that changed my mind. She said, Denzel, if you do not go, you will spend the rest of your life acting out the ending you never got to have. He looked at Oprah. So I went. Behind the scenes, Oprah made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. She signaled to her team. Clear the next segment. The producer scrambled. This was supposed to be a 90-minute show with multiple segments, clips, and audience questions. Oprah was throwing all of it away because she recognized what was happening. This was not an interview anymore. This was a confession, and confessions cannot be contained by television schedules. Continue, she said to Denzel. Please, take all the time you need. Denzel nodded. When I walked into that hospital room, he said, I did not know what to expect. Part of me wanted to yell at him. Part of me wanted to demand answers. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave. He shook his head. But when I saw him lying there, tubes everywhere, so small in that bed, all of that fell away. He was just a man, a dying man. My father. His voice cracked. He looked at me and said, I am sorry, son. Those were the first words out of his mouth. I am sorry. Denzel wiped his eyes. I sat down next to him, and for 3 days, he talked. He told me things he had never told anyone. Things about his own childhood. Things about his own father. Things about the weight he had been carrying his whole life. He touched the envelope, and on the last day, he gave me this. Oprah looked at the envelope. The audience looked at the envelope. 400 people waited. He said, I wrote this the night I left, Denzel continued. I have carried it with me for over 40 years. I never had the courage to give it to you, but I want you to have it now. I want you to know the truth. Denzel's hands moved toward the envelope, then stopped. I have never opened it, he said. Oprah's eyes widened. Never, she asked. Denzel shook his head. After he gave it to me, he fell asleep. And the next morning, he was gone. And I just could not bring myself to open it. I was afraid. He looked at Oprah. Afraid of what I would find. Afraid of what he might say. Afraid that after all these years, the explanation would not be enough. He picked up the envelope. But I realized something he said. I have been carrying this for 3 years. Carrying it like he carried it for 40. And I did not want to spend the rest of my life wondering what is inside. He held out to Oprah. I want you to open it, he said. Oprah's breath caught. Me? She whispered. You, he said. Because I cannot do it alone. And because I think the world needs to hear this. Whatever it says, I think people need to know that even Denzel Washington has a letter he is afraid to open. This is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. Oprah took the envelope. Her hand was shaking now too. She turned it over. The tape was brittle. It flaked away at her touch. She slid her finger under the flap. The paper tore slightly. She pulled out a single sheet. Yellow legal paper. Handwritten. The ink had faded, but the words were still legible. She looked at Denzel. He nodded. She began to read aloud. To my son Denzel. She paused to steady her voice. If you're reading this, then I am either dead or finally brave enough to face you. I pray it is the second. But knowing myself, it is probably the first. The audience was completely silent. I left because I was broken, the letter continued. Not because of you. Not because of your mother. Not because of anything you did or did not do. I left because there was a darkness in me that I did not know how to fight. A darkness that I was afraid would swallow you whole if I stayed. Oprah's voice trembled. When I was a boy, my father beat me. Every day. He told me I was worthless. He told me I would never amount to anything. He told me that I was a mistake that should never have been born. And I believed him. I carried those words inside me my whole life. And when I became a father myself, I heard his voice in my head every time I looked at you. She wiped her eyes. The audience wept silently. Denzel sat motionless, tears streaming down his face. I was afraid, the letter continued. Afraid that if I stayed, I would become him. Afraid that one day I would look at you the way he looked at me. Afraid that I would break you the way he broke me. So I ran. I told myself I was protecting you. But really I was just a coward. Oprah had to stop. She took a breath. She continued. I have watched you from afar all these years. Every movie, every award, every interview. And I have felt two things. Pride that is beyond description and shame that is equally vast. Pride because you became everything I could not. And shame because you did it without me. She turned to the second page. There is more, she said. Denzel nodded. She kept reading. I know I cannot undo the damage I did. I know that sorry is just a word. But I need you to know the truth. The truth is that I loved you. Every single day since the day you were born, I have loved you. I was just too broken to show it. Oprah's voice cracked. The truth is that leaving you was the hardest thing I ever did. And staying away was even harder. But I convinced myself it was for the best. I convinced myself that you were better off without me. And maybe you were. Look at who you became. Look at the man you are. Maybe my absence was the best gift I could give you. She shook her head. But I do not believe that anymore, she read. I think I was wrong. I think you needed a father. And I think I failed you in the most fundamental way a man can fail his son. She reached the final paragraph. So here's what I want to say, son. Here is what I should have said 40 years ago. I am proud of you. Not for the awards. Not for the fame. Not for the money. I am proud of the man you are. The husband. The father. The person who chose to break the cycle. You did what I cannot do. You stayed. You loved. You showed up every day for your children. And that makes you more of a man than I ever was. Oprah looked at Denzel. She read the final words. You are not my legacy, Denzel. I am yours. And I am sorry it took me dying to tell you that. I love you, son. I always have. Your father. The letter fell from Oprah's hands. It drifted to the floor. And something happened that had never happened on the Oprah Winfrey show. Denzel Washington stood up. He walked to where Oprah sat, and he embraced her. Not a polite celebrity hug. A real embrace. The embrace of a man who had just heard his father's voice for the first time in 40 years. The embrace of a man who had just been released from a prison he did not know he was in. The embrace of a man who finally understood. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The audience rose to their feet. Not in applause. In witness. They understood that they were seeing something sacred. Something that was not meant to be performed. Something that was simply true. Oprah held Denzel while he wept. She held him for nearly 3 minutes. The cameras kept rolling. The producers did not dare cut away. And when Denzel finally pulled back, his face was transformed. The tension he had carried for decades was gone. The armor he had worn his entire public life had fallen away. He looked younger somehow. Lighter. Free. I spent so many years hating him, Denzel said. His voice was hoarse but clear. So many years trying to prove that I did not need him. That I was better without him. He shook his head. But I was not trying to prove anything to the world. I was trying to prove it to myself. Because deep down, I believed what he believed. I believed that I was worthless. That I would never amount to anything. That I was a mistake. He looked at Oprah. That is why I never opened the letter, he said. Because I was afraid it would confirm everything I feared. I was afraid he would say he left because I was not worth staying for. He picked up the letter from the floor. But that is not what he said, Denzel continued. He said he left because he was broken. He said he loved me. He said he was proud of me. His voice broke. He said, I am his legacy. He whispered, not the other way around. Oprah placed her hand on his. Do you understand what that means? She asked gently. Denzel nodded. It means I am free, he said. It means I can stop fighting a ghost. It means I can stop trying to prove something to a man who already believed in me. He looked at the letter in his hands. And it means I have to forgive him, he said. Not for his sake. For mine. Because carrying this anger has not hurt him. He is gone. It has only hurt me. He folded the letter carefully. He placed it back in the envelope. And he did something unexpected. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a pen. He wrote something on the outside of the envelope. Then he held it up for the audience to see. One word. Forgiven. The audience erupted. Not in applause. In release. The sound that filled that studio was something beyond clapping. It was catharsis. For 100 people who had their own letters. Their own fathers. Their own wounds that had never healed. They saw themselves in Denzel Washington. And they saw the possibility of freedom. The episode was supposed to end at 12:30 p.m. It did not end until 2 p.m. For another 90 minutes, Oprah transformed the show into something unprecedented. She invited audience members to share their own stories. A woman stood up and talked about the mother who abandoned her. A man stood up and talked about the brother he had not spoken to in 20 years. Another woman stood up and talked about the letter she had written but never sent. One by one, they came forward. One by one, they confessed. One by one, they committed to the same thing Denzel had done. Forgiveness. Not because the people who hurt them deserved it, but because they deserved to be free. Oprah provided resources. Therapiste contact. Support group information. Books on healing family wounds. And she made an announcement. Starting today, she said, we are establishing the Forgiven Initiative, a program to help people reconnect with estranged family members, to facilitate difficult conversations, to provide counseling and support for those ready to heal. She looked at Denzel. Because if Denzel Washington can open a letter he carried for 3 years, she said, then any of us can open the doors we have kept closed. Denzel nodded. And I'm going to fund it, he said. The first $1 million comes from me. Because this letter changed my life. And I want to change other lives too. The audience rose again. This time in applause. This time in hope. The episode aired 1 month later. It became the most discussed episode in television history. It was covered by every major news outlet. It was analyzed by psychologists and relationship experts. It was played in therapy sessions and family counseling centers. And it inspired a movement. Within 6 months, the Forgiven Initiative had helped over 8,000 families reconnect. Letters were written. Calls were made. Doors were opened. Wounds were healed. Denzel spoke at the initiative's first anniversary celebration. My father carried that letter for 40 years, he said. 40 years of words unspoken. 40 years of love unexpressed. 40 years of fear winning over faith. He held up the envelope, but he gave it to me before he died. And that act of courage in his final days changed everything. It proved that it is never too late. Never too late to tell the truth. Never too late to ask for forgiveness. Never too late to say I love you. He looked at the audience. So I'm asking all of you, what letter are you carrying? What truth have you been afraid to tell? What door have you been afraid to open? He paused. Do not wait 40 years. Do not wait until you are dying. Do not wait until it's too late. He placed his hand over his heart. Open the letter now, while there is still time, while you can still look the person in the eyes, while you can still feel the embrace on the other side of forgiveness. He smiled. Because that embrace, he said, that is what life is for. Oprah keeps the envelope in her office, not the letter. Denzel kept that, but the envelope, with the word forgiven written in Denzel's handwriting. She looks at it every day. It reminds her of what that show is really about. Not celebrity, not entertainment, not ratings. Connection, truth, healing. She has said that in 40 years of television, no moment has affected her more than watching Denzel Washington read his father's letter. Not because it was dramatic, because it was true. Not because it was performative, because it was vulnerable. Not because it was a good story, because it was his story, and sharing it took more courage than any role he had ever played. There is one final detail that most people do not know. After the taping ended, after the audience had gone home, after the crew had packed up the equipment, Denzel and Oprah sat together on the empty stage. They did not speak for a long time. Finally, Denzel broke the silence. Thank you, he said. For what? Oprah asked. For reading it for me, he said. I do not think I could have done it myself. Oprah shook her head. You did do it yourself, she said. I just held the paper. The courage was all yours. Denzel looked at the envelope in his hands. Do you think he knew? He asked. Do you think my father knew that this letter would change things? Oprah considered the question. I think he hoped, she said. I think that is all any of us can do when we write a letter like that. We hope that the person on the other end will receive it. We'll hear it. We'll let it in. She paused. And you let it in, Denzel. After all those years, after all that pain, you let it in. Denzel nodded slowly. He did. And in letting it in, he let something else out. The anger, the resentment, the wound that had shaped him for half a century. He let it all go. And in its place, something new took root. Peace, acceptance, grace. The kind of grace that only comes when we stop fighting the past and start embracing it. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story like this. Because there are more letters waiting to be opened. More truths waiting to be told. More doors waiting to be unlocked. And somewhere out there, someone is carrying an envelope they have been afraid to open. Maybe it is you. Maybe it is someone you love. Maybe it is time. Time to stop carrying. Time to start reading. Time to write one word on the outside of that envelope. Forgiven. And finally be free.